So welcome in. If this is a highlight, everybody, smash that like button. What is Ashes of Creation that it's doing that makes it interesting? Chris, I'll let you jump in on your answer first. Like from a positive perspective, and then we could because we've talked about like a lot of red flags, guys.
I'm hopeful. It's on
Yeah.
my list of games I'd love to play.
Yeah. What makes it interesting?
So first of all, their funding strategy is incredibly intriguing. They basically had a Kickstarter, but it is run by a guy who made his money outside of gaming. And it's that dream. It's that I hear people talk about this sometimes on streams. They'll go, why isn't there some oil baron or some prince in the Middle East or some independent billionaire that likes games going out there, not beholden to anybody, not beholden to any, they don't have any corporate structure. They don't have any microtransaction thing they have to hit, releasing and just making a game good. And I heard somebody say it in a video the other day. I think maybe it was Lucky Ghost. Somebody said, why don't they just go out and hire all the best devs and make the best game? And like, it sounds like this fantasy. It doesn't sound possible. Like, oh, yeah, we should have just got the good devs and made the game
the
good.
Whole time.
Oh my gosh. Like it's on their name tag, good dev. And then they make good game. And like, it's so easy. And so like, and like, it is an easy thing for me to hope for. And like, but it never seems to happen. And Ashes, in theory, has a pedigree development staff that doesn't owe anybody anything and has a big pile of Steven's money. And if it's a scam, it's not a good one because so far he's just out a lot of money. So funding wise, it is incredibly intriguing because we don't have that many examples of anything like this happening unless it's going to be down in the indie genre. But the indie genre can't take on the breadth of what Ashes promises. Ashes promises to be enormous. So this isn't something that's more crowdfunded, something like Warframe or Dwarf Fortress or something that, or Elite Dangerous, where it's done at a grassroots level and builds. This is coming in at the AAA marquee level, not owing anybody anything.
So to kind of build off that, like one game I would also toss in that would be like Embers Adrift, because that is kind of a semi-crowdfunded MMO, but that's driven more into the hardcore old school style. Embers has a subscription model, which for me, I've looked at the genre itself and I'm like, I don't know what its future is, but the subscription model looks like it's going to be just kind of a marker of its past at some point. Like at some point, something's going to give, and you'll see Final Fantasy 14 bundled with a subscription to another service as well. Like you could individually subscribe, but I could see them bundling that to be able to control, draw in more people. Same thing with WoW, with they already have the token, etc. Like I just think that at some point people are going to hit subscription fatigue. But Embers launches with a subscription. I'm like, that's curious. I'm interested in just like as a data point in history. But also Ashes is having that aspect. Now, Ashes is marketing itself as a sand park. And that's something that a term I've been using for a couple years, saying the blending. I think the future of the genre itself is a blending of the theme park and the sandbox MMORPG. That's essentially saying like, why do you play the game? And having an MMO that offers a easy access to jump in, and you don't have to be a player who has to then craft your own adventure to craft your own goals. You have the theme park. It's going to say, hey, welcome in. You can go here. You can follow this kind of pathway and you're going to have a good time. But then as soon as you're done with that, like, hey, then we also have this other kind of game that's more sandboxy in nature and allows you to kind of choose your own goals and do these different things. So for me, when I look at like the interesting things that Ashes is doing, it's not that they're doing, and Chris has brought this up, it's not that they're doing anything like unique or never heard of before in an MMORPG, but it sounds like they're iterating off of what has come before, seeing what has worked and what has struggled, and at least on paper, really trying to refine like a balance that can appease the PvEer and the PvPer at the same time, with respect to like overall kind of creating that metaverse of a world that you kind of want to be invested in, you kind of want to be a part of. Players are kind of really driving a storied narrative so that on your server, your world and setup is different from somebody else's server. And so you end up having these water cooler style moments of, oh my gosh, I can't believe we lost the town. Okay, guys, we got to get together and have it back. And that's what they're trying to generate. They're trying to generate basically these dynamic and player driven D&D campaigns as somebody who's never played D&D. But like that's kind of how I hear of it, because it sounds like, especially Steven's building this off of his own like D&D campaign, like originally that they've written and done. So it's not that I would say Ashes is doing anything that's this has never been heard of or said, because like you look at well, they just also announced it's not Asheron's Call 2, it's Arcade 2, and a lot of people draw a lot of comparisons to Ashes to original Arcade, which had some interesting systems and things like that, but had some downsides to those systems. So it sounds like, if nothing else, that they're trying to refine, they're trying to sit here and have this kind of also more independent style, and bring about, and if it succeeds, it could have a real impact on the genre. But if it doesn't, oh man, like bummer. Go
ahead. So the second thing I would say is that they have taken on an incredibly bold message. So it picks up off what Brian said. Final Fantasy XIV decided they would put a good narrative in MMO. And as a result, there is an entire group of people who now say that game can no longer be considered an MMO. It has to be an RPG first. And so the moment you make a good marquee feature, that now defines you. Mm-hmm. That starts to say, nope, the raids aren't good in Final Fantasy without the story. And the crafting and gathering in the system isn't good without the story. It is a story game first, and everything else comes after. The moment you make something defining, you can't escape that definition, even for players who aren't interested in that. Could somebody like Final Fantasy XIV who doesn't like story? Absolutely. There are a ton of other redeeming features to Final Fantasy XIV. Brilliant devs doing brilliant work day in and day out for years on end. And yet the story is so good that people are like, nope, 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 nope. I mean, it's like a steak restaurant that wins an award for a steak is not allowed to have a good dessert or a good sandwich or make a good salad. And anybody who doesn't like steak isn't allowed to say they enjoyed their meal. They have to just leave disappointed. That's the rule. And so, and World of Warcraft gets that with their rating and their Mythic Plus. People are like, I would like to play WoW because I want to try out this thing I heard about pet battles or about being in the world, or I like exploration, or I like leveling in new MMOs. But because I don't like Mythic rating, I probably won't like it. That's not true. Like, there's a ton of people. Only, I think it's like 3% of the population in WoW clear Mythic raids.
Right.
So 97% don't. And yet people get this idea that if they can't do that content, the whole game is trash and should be burned to the ground. And so what's interesting about Ashes is that they're claiming that they're going to do all of these things at that level, that they are going to have a groundbreaking story, that they are going to have groundbreaking PvE elements, and that this is all taking place in a PvP world. And when you ask who that caters to, they say, well, we know that this isn't going to cater to everybody, and that's okay, because we're building it for the people that do like it. And you're like, okay, so it's going to be small and niche. There are games that are niche and do very, very well. And they said yes. And as a result of being niche, we are going back to the golden age of MMOs like Wrath of the Lich King, when we have 12 million concurrent players. And you're like, so it's going to be so niche it's big? And so like it's just,
and if you don't get it,
like they're trying to be the ones who like invented grunge or something.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be like so outside that they're inside the mainstream. So
yeah,
I have a lot of interest in following them because I get told that they're going to have all this success because it's going to be the most amazing game ever. But that if you don't like it, it's okay, because you're one of the sheep that don't understand the complexity of what it is
you don't know what good games are.
So it's in this perfect place. And so like I like following it just because like it's so contradictory that I can't put my head around what it is. And so I find that incredibly intriguing. I don't really know how to sell it because like I don't know what it is I'm buying.
Right.
As opposed to like I know exactly what World of Warcraft is. And so all I was hoping for Dragonflight is that it was a World of Warcraft game. And I bought Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and all I wanted was a Call of Duty game. And I know exactly what that is. I have no idea what Ashes is.
And so like on that degree, and I want to bring up David's comment as well, because I think it's important, but on that note though, that's kind of where you see games have these moments of true inflection. So if Ashes succeeds, if it comes out and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I understand it now, and this is really brilliant, right? Everybody will look at it and say, it's obvious, right? This was the system that should have always been put into every MMO. Now, if it fails, it's going to fail for those very same reasons, where people will say it was obvious, it wasn't going to succeed. And it's because like that's kind of like gamers are like, I want everything that I understand, and I want it to be new and revolutionary. And so it's like gamers automatically have this baked in set of contradictory demands. And that's what some of the developers are like, well, yeah, like you keep buying Skyrim. So like the data says keep giving you Skyrim. Like it's like, all right, well, I guess we'll see in the next iteration of Skyrim. You know, like that, and that's how it kind of like there's a talk element versus and like what are gamers willing to actively support. And if it is too different and not easily understood, it actually runs the risk of chasing people away. And when it comes to PvP, like David is bringing this up, it's like I think this is going to be one of the most interesting studies, because when it comes down to the numbers and how players interact with these things, the fact that like there is open world PvP, but there's some kind of justice system and there's some kind of like way in which that, you know, players can kind of grief, but you don't have to worry about, like, it's not necessarily completely clear. And let's say it's the most intelligent way of doing that system. It's going to keep people away, at least at the start, because if you're worried about like getting like killed by another player randomly, like you're just going to go play the game in which you don't have to stress about that. Now, I'm not somebody who goes and grieves people in games, but that's something that's actually generally interesting to me. Like the danger of the world, like you're out in the world and there's a risk
got
to
like
you.
a karma system.
Well, there's a karma and there's a, like, if you
and the karma system is like, if you were talking to somebody who said what David said, the karma system would be, well, they won't just attack you because they'll take a karma penalty.
Yeah.
But then my brothers who only like games with a PvP or leaderboard element, if they're going to do PvE, it's because somebody can win. Then if they then commented right after David and said, why would I do it if I can't attack everybody? I would then turn right back around and say, you can attack anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I just told David they won't attack you because of the karma penalty. And then I turned right back around and told my brother, but you can attack him.
Yeah.
As long as you're willing to take a minor penalty. And so like it can be sold to both audiences until it's real. You've got Schrodinger's feature. And then the moment the game comes out, it's going to collapse down and we're going to have one feature. And you're very quickly going to decide, is it in David's feature? Is it in David's corner or is it in my brother's? And can it be cheated? Can David do something goofy where my brother has to take an extra penalty so he doesn't do it? Or can my brother somehow bait David into accidentally flagging himself and now the system goes away? And that's the other thing that is known about like systems that are meant to force gameplay is the moment you force gameplay, the moment you force something, players are going to start pushing up against, how do I play the way I want though? Like, how do I work around this?
Yeah. And I can see based off of what they've shared, and maybe I'm not fully understanding the notes, but like I could see where you end up having a scout who's never badly flagged. And it's like, yo, all right, we got a guy here. And all it is like, he's just doing his private link shell tell. Like if you think of hunt trains in Ashes, where you have somebody who just runs out, like I didn't flag you, but literally then communicating to a bunch of people who don't mind being flagged, and that's their kind of fun. And then all of a sudden you just get destroyed by a bunch of red name tagged players because they're just like sending out scouts. So they're like, you're not like, you don't see them off in the distance until like they know exactly where you are. Like it's going to be interesting. It literally is going to be the most interesting thing, because at the end of the day, it's going to give us more data that we can sit down and talk about and say, this is why. Like everybody says that this is what they want, but it turns out, no, that's not the case. Or they knock it out of the park and all of a sudden we're like, well, there we go. There we go.
War mode was a massive leap forward. Back in the day, there were PvP servers and PvE servers. That's how games handled things, or PvE zones and PvP zones. The ability to make the entire world toggleable has been a relatively recent feature in games, and it's doing great things. And so if this is the next iteration of that, and it's pulling from a very old system that existed way back, but if this is if this with 2022 developers and technology, because some of this stuff is like, oh, I took this idea from 1990, but like RAM now works in gigs. So like I was able to do things differently.
Yeah.
Because I took an idea they had then and I implemented it with the technology of today. Maybe it is the answer. And if it is the answer, like everybody who said that Ashes would fail will look like an idiot. If it's not the answer, everybody who said Ashes would be the greatest game ever will look like an idiot. Our experience with the internet, I think most of you will agree, will say that in reality, the people who were right will let you know they were right, and the people who were wrong are going to quietly go talk somewhere else.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm just over here now. Hey guys, have you heard about the newest next MMO that's,
Yeah, yeah. No, I meant the Riot MMO.
yeah, that's what we were talking about the whole time. The whole time.